The check bounced again. I stared at the red letters on my phone screen, feeling my stomach drop into my shoes. Insufficient funds. How could that be? I had deposited my entire paycheck just 3 days ago. $2,000 that I had earned working double shifts at the hospital, my feet aching, my back screaming, my body running on coffee and determination. And now it was gone. I knew where it went. I had always known where it went. But admitting it to myself meant facing a truth I had been avoiding for 3 years, and I was not ready for that. Not yet. So I did what I always did. I took a deep breath, pulled up my banking app, and checked the transaction history. There it was. A withdrawal of $1,800 at 2 in the morning made at a casino ATM 40 miles outside the city. Marcus, my husband, my partner, my supposed soulmate who had promised me the world and delivered nothing but debt and disappointment. I sat down on the edge of our bed, the same bed where we had made love just that morning before I left for my shift. He had been so tender, so present, whispering that he loved me, that I was his everything, that he would do better. And I had believed him. God help me, I had believed him again. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I know you're mad. But I was so close this time. I almost won it all back. Just give me one more chance. I promise I'll fix everything." I had heard those exact words at least 50 times in the past year, maybe 100. I had lost count. Each time he had that same desperate edge to his voice, that same pleading look in his eyes, that same promise that this was the last time that he had learned his lesson, that he would change. And each time, like a fool, I had forgiven him. But this was different. This was rent money. This was grocery money. This was the money I had been saving to finally visit my sister in Oregon, who I had not seen in 2 years because I could never afford the plane ticket. Because every dollar I earned disappeared into Marcus's addiction like water into sand. I looked around our apartment, really looked at it for the first time in months. The furniture was old and worn, most of it salvaged from thrift stores or found on curbs. The walls were bare because we could not afford art. The kitchen cabinets were mostly empty because I had been stretching every meal, making one chicken breast last 3 days, eating ramen more often than I cared to admit. Meanwhile, Marcus drove a car that was 2 years old, wore designer sneakers, and always had money for his friends when they went out. But never for rent, never for groceries, never for the things that actually mattered. I heard his key in the lock. My body tensed automatically, a response I had developed over the past year, not because he was violent. Marcus had never laid a hand on me in anger. But there was a different kind of violence in the way he manipulated my emotions, in the way he made me feel guilty for being upset about my own money, disappearing in the way he twisted every conversation until I was the one apologizing for his mistakes. He walked in looking sheepish, holding a bouquet of cheap flowers from the grocery store. The same flowers he always brought when he had done something wrong. Red roses that cost $7 and were supposed to make up for the $1,800 he had stolen from our account. "Baby," he started, his voice soft and wounded. "I can explain." "No." The word came out of my mouth before I could stop it. "No, you can't explain, not this time." He blinked, clearly surprised. I never said no. I always let him explain, let him spin his web of excuses and promises until I was so confused I forgot why I was angry in the first place. "What do you mean?" He set the flowers down on the counter, his expression shifting from apologetic to defensive. "I'm trying to talk to you. The least you could do is listen." "I've been listening for 3 years, Marcus. I've been listening while you promised to stop gambling. I've been listening while you swore you would get help. I've been listening while you blamed your childhood, your stress, your bad luck, everyone and everything except yourself. And where has it gotten us? We're drowning. We're about to be evicted. I'm working myself to death, and we still can't pay our bills because you can't stop throwing money away." His face darkened. "Throwing money away, I was trying to win us something better. I was trying to make enough money so you wouldn't have to work so hard. You think I like seeing you exhausted all the time. I was doing it for us." There it was, the twist. The way he made his selfishness sound like sacrifice. The way he made me feel ungrateful for questioning him. I had fallen for it 1,000 times before, feeling guilty for not appreciating his efforts, for not understanding the pressure he was under, for not being supportive enough. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the final straw of seeing my rent money disappear. Maybe it was the realization that I had been living in survival mode for so long I had forgotten what it felt like to actually live. Whatever it was, I felt something inside me shift hard and crystallize into a cold, clear truth. "You weren't doing it for us," I said quietly. "You were doing it for yourself. Because you like the rush. Because you like the fantasy of the big win more than you like the reality of being a responsible partner. And I'm done pretending that's okay. Marcus stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. You're done. What does that mean? It means I want you to leave. The words hung in the air between us, solid and real and terrifying. I had never said them before. I had thought them 100 times lying awake at night while he slept peacefully beside me, his phone full of gambling apps and sports betting sites, his conscience apparently unburdened, but I had never said them out loud. You don't mean that, he said, his voice taking on that gentle, coaxing tone he used when he wanted something. You're just upset. Let's talk about this. Let's figure it out together. We always figure it out. No, Marcus, you figure out how to convince me to give you another chance, and I figure out how to survive the consequences. That's not a partnership. That's not a marriage. That's me slowly drowning while you use me as a life raft. He stepped closer, reaching for my hands. I pulled away. That seemed to hurt him more than my words. Good, let it hurt. Let him feel a fraction of what I had been feeling. Please, he said, and there were actual tears in his eyes. Don't do this. I love you. I need you. I'll change. I promise. I'll really change this time. I'll go to Gamblers Anonymous. I'll get therapy, whatever you want. Just don't give up on me. I had heard these promises before. So many times they had lost all meaning. But this time I noticed something I had missed before. He said he would change if I did not give up on him. He needed me to stay so he could change. It was still conditional. Still dependent on me. Still putting the responsibility for his recovery on my shoulders instead of his own. If you really want to change, Marcus, you'll do it for yourself, not for me, and you'll do it somewhere else. I need you to leave, tonight. His expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, hurt, confusion, and then finally anger. Are you serious right now? You're kicking me out of my own apartment. It's my apartment. My name is on the lease. I've been paying the rent. You've contributed exactly nothing to this household except broken promises and empty bank accounts. That's not fair, he said, his voice rising. I've been trying. You know how hard it is for me. You know about my problems. You're supposed to support me through this. I have supported you. For 3 years. I've covered your debts, made excuses to your family, lied to our friends about why we can never go out. I've sacrificed my own mental health, my own financial stability, my own dreams, all to support you. And what have you given me in return? More lies, more broken promises. More nights wondering if we'll have enough money to eat. You're making it sound so much worse than it is, he said, and I could see him shifting tactics again, trying to minimize, trying to make me doubt my own experience. Yeah, I have a problem with gambling, but lots of people have worse problems. At least I'm not an alcoholic. At least I don't hit you. You should be grateful for what you have instead of focusing on the negative. And there it was. The thing that had kept me trapped for so long. The idea that I should be grateful he was not worse. That I should accept the abuse I was getting because it could always be worse. That my standards for a partner should be so low that simply not hitting me qualified as good enough. Get out, I said, and my voice was steady now, calm and cold. Pack a bag and get out. You can come back for the rest of your things later, but I want you gone tonight. You're really doing this? He looked genuinely shocked, as if the idea that I might actually follow through had never occurred to him. Over one mistake. It's not one mistake, Marcus. It's 3 years of mistakes. It's hundreds of lies. It's thousands of dollars that could have given us a good life. It's every single time you chose your addiction over me, over us. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being your mother. I'm done being your ATM. I'm just done. For a long moment he just stood there staring at me like he was trying to find the angle, the right words that would make me back down. But I held his gaze, and something in my expression must have told him that this time was different. This time I meant it. Fine, he said finally, his voice bitter. If that's what you want. But you're going to regret this. You think you can do better than me. You think someone else is going to put up with your hours, your stress, your constant nagging. Good luck. You're going to end up alone, and you're going to realize you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you. His words were designed to hurt, to plant seeds of doubt, to make me question my decision. A month ago, they would have worked. But right now, standing in this shabby apartment that I had worked myself to exhaustion to maintain, looking at this man who had taken everything from me and given nothing back, I felt nothing but relief. If being alone means having control over my own life, then I'll take it, I said. Go pack your things. He stood there for another moment, waiting for me to crack, to apologize, to take it back. When I did not, he turned and walked into the bedroom. I heard him moving around, slamming drawers, muttering under his breath. I sat down on the couch and waited, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was starting to wear off. 20 minutes later, he emerged with a duffel bag and his laptop. He paused at the door, and for a second I thought he might try one more time to convince me. But instead he just shook his head. "You're making a huge mistake," he said, "but I guess you'll have to learn that the hard way." Then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I was alone in the apartment for the first time in 3 years. The silence was deafening. I sat on the couch waiting to feel something. Sadness, regret, doubt, but all I felt was tired, so incredibly bone-deep tired. I pulled out my phone and looked at my bank account again. $17.32. That was all I had until my next paycheck, which was 2 weeks away. But it was mine. Every single cent of it belonged to me, and no one could take it away. I started to laugh. It was a slightly hysterical sound, bubbling up from somewhere deep in my chest, but it felt good, cleansing. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, until my sides hurt, until the absurdity of feeling relieved about having $17 finally sank in. This was rock bottom. But it was my rock bottom, and I would climb up from here on my own terms. The next morning I woke up to silence. No Marcus snoring beside me, no anxiety about what he might have done while I was sleeping, no checking my phone first thing to see if there were any suspicious transactions. Just quiet, peaceful morning light streaming through the window. I made myself coffee using the last of the grounds and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. I had 2 weeks until rent was due, and I was short by $1,800, the amount Marcus had stolen. I needed a plan. First, I called my landlord. He was a decent guy, middle-aged, with a soft spot for reliable tenants, which I had been until recently. I explained the situation, keeping it brief and factual. My husband had a gambling problem. He was gone now. I needed a payment plan for this month's rent. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he sighed. "I'm sorry you're going through that. Look, I can give you until the end of the month, but I'll need the full amount then. And if you're late again, I'll have to start eviction proceedings. It's not personal, it's just business." "I understand. Thank you. I'll have it by the end of the month." I had no idea how I would make that happen, but I would figure it out. I always did. Next, I texted my supervisor at the hospital and asked if there were any extra shifts available. She responded within an hour. They were short-staffed as always, and I could pick up as many shifts as I wanted. I signed up for every available slot over the next 2 weeks. It would be brutal, but it would give me the money I needed. Then I did something I had been avoiding for a year. I called my sister. Emma. Her voice was cautious. We had not spoken in months, not since the last time she had confronted me about Marcus, and I had defended him. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said, and my voice cracked. "Everything is not okay, but I'm fixing it. I kicked Marcus out." There was a sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God, are you serious? What happened?" I told her everything. The gambling, the lies, the money, the constant cycle of promises and disappointments. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, I heard her crying. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry you went through that alone. I wish you had told me sooner." I was ashamed, I admitted. I felt like an idiot for staying so long, for believing him so many times. I didn't want anyone to know how bad it was. "You're not an idiot. You're a victim of financial abuse. That's what this is, Emma, abuse. And I'm so proud of you for getting out." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Abuse. I had never thought of it that way. Marcus had never hit me, never screamed at me, never threatened me. But he had systematically drained my resources, manipulated my emotions, and left me in a constant state of financial crisis. That was abuse, even if it looked different from what I had imagined. "I need help," I said quietly. "I need to borrow some money, just until I get back on my feet. I'll pay you back, I promise." "How much do you need?" $1,800. For rent. I'm picking up extra shifts, and I'll have it back to you by next month." "Done. I'll transfer it today." "And Emma, you don't have to pay me back. Consider it a gift. A fresh start gift." I started crying, then the kind of crying that shakes your whole body, that releases years of pent-up stress and fear and exhaustion. My sister stayed on the line, saying nothing, just letting me cry it out. "Thank you," I finally managed. "Thank you so much." That's what sisters are for. "Now listen, I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. Not just financially, but emotionally. See a therapist, join a support group. Do whatever you need to do to heal from this." Okay, I promise." We talked for another hour, catching up on everything we had missed in each other's lives. She told me about her new job, her girlfriend, her apartment with the view of the mountains. I told her about my work at the hospital, the patients I loved, the small moments of joy I found even in the chaos. It felt good to talk to someone who genuinely cared about me, who was not using the conversation to manipulate or guilt me. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but lighter. Like I had set down a weight I had been carrying for so long, I had forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The money appeared in my account that afternoon. I immediately paid my rent, feeling an almost physical relief when the payment went through. Then I went grocery shopping, really grocery shopping, for the first time in months. Fresh vegetables, real meat, coffee that did not come in a giant plastic container. I spent $200 and did not feel guilty about a single purchase because it was my money spent on my needs and no one could take it away from me. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked like a machine. 12-hour shifts, sometimes 16. I came home and collapsed, slept for 6 hours, then went back. My body ached. My feet were covered in blisters. My mind was foggy with exhaustion. But my bank account grew. Slowly, steadily, it grew. Marcus tried to contact me multiple times. Texts, calls, emails, each one following the same pattern. First, anger and accusations. I was cruel, heartless, unsupportive. Then guilt trips about how much he was suffering without me. Then promises to change to get help to be better. Then, when none of that worked, attempts to make me jealous by talking about other women who appreciated him. I blocked him everywhere. I did not need his poison in my life anymore. But other people were harder to block. Marcus's mother called me crying, begging me to give her son another chance. He was a good boy, she said. He just had some problems. I needed to be more understanding, more patient. Did I not remember my wedding vows, for better or worse? I took those vows seriously, I told her. But Marcus broke them every single time he chose gambling over our marriage. Every time he lied to me. Every time he stole from our account. He broke those vows, not me. I'm just finally accepting that they're broken. She hung up on me. Fine. I had never liked her anyway. Marcus's best friend showed up at my apartment one evening asking to talk. Against my better judgment, I let him in. Look, I know Marcus messed up, he said, sitting on my couch like he belonged there. But he's really struggling. He's been sleeping on my couch and he's depressed. He needs you, Emma. He needs his wife. What about what I need? I asked. Did Marcus ever think about that? Did you? He looked uncomfortable. I just think marriage is supposed to be about forgiveness, about working through problems together. I did work through problems. For 3 years. Alone. While Marcus continued to gamble away every dollar I earned, there's a difference between working through problems and enabling self-destruction. I'm done enabling. You're really not going to give him another chance? No. He left shaking his head, muttering something about how women these days gave up too easily. I locked the door behind him and added him to the list of people I no longer needed in my life. But the hardest conversation came from an unexpected source. My mother called, which was unusual. We had never been particularly close, but we maintained a polite relationship. She had always liked Marcus, thought he was charming and handsome, a good catch for her daughter. I heard you and Marcus separated, she said, her voice carefully neutral. We did. He has a gambling addiction and was stealing money from our account. Oh, Emma, don't you think you're being a bit dramatic? All men have their vices. Your father liked to drink. You don't see me divorcing him over it. I thought about my father, about the years of watching my mother make excuses for his drinking, cover up his mistakes, pretend everything was fine while he spent their money on alcohol, and missed important events because he was passed out on the couch. I thought about how small and quiet my mother had become over the years, how she had shrunk herself to accommodate his addiction. Maybe you should have, I said quietly. There was a shocked silence. That's a terrible thing to say to your mother. I'm sorry if it hurts, but it's true. Dad's drinking destroyed our family. It destroyed your happiness. You spent your whole life enabling him, and what did it get you? He died at 55 from liver failure, and you spent your best years taking care of someone who never took care of himself. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sacrifice my life for someone who won't even try to change. Marriage is about sacrifice, she said, her voice tight. Sacrifice, yes, but not self-destruction. There's a difference. I'm sorry you don't see that, but I do. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat there holding the phone, feeling sad for my mother, sad for the life she had chosen, sad that she could not understand why I was making a different choice. But I was not going to let her guilt change my mind. 3 weeks after Marcus left, I got a letter from a lawyer. He was filing for divorce and demanding half of everything. I almost laughed. Half of what our debt, our broken dreams, he was welcome to his half. I found my own lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in cases involving financial abuse. I showed her everything. Bank statements showing the pattern of unauthorized withdrawals, text messages where Marcus admitted to gambling, records of all the times I had paid the bills alone. She nodded grimly as she reviewed it all. "This is clear-cut financial abuse," she said. "He's not entitled to anything. In fact, you might be able to sue him for reimbursement of the money he stole." "I don't want his money, I just want him out of my life." "Then that's what we'll do." The divorce process was surprisingly quick. Marcus fought it at first, claiming he deserved alimony, claiming I had abandoned him in his time of need. But when faced with the evidence of his gambling and theft, his lawyer advised him to settle. 6 months after I kicked him out, I was officially divorced. I celebrated by taking myself out to dinner at a nice restaurant. Just me, myself, and I. I ordered the most expensive thing on the menu and a glass of wine. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, feeling proud of myself for the first time in years. During those 6 months, I had done more than just work and wait for the divorce to be finalized. I had started therapy as I had promised my sister. My therapist, Dr. Chen, was a gentle woman who specialized in trauma and abuse recovery. She helped me understand the patterns that had kept me trapped, the ways Marcus had manipulated me, the reasons I had stayed so long. "You're not weak for staying," she told me in one of our early sessions. "Abusers are experts at manipulation. They make you doubt your own perception of reality. They make you feel responsible for their problems. They isolate you from support systems. What happened to you was not your fault." Those words were like a salve on a wound I had not realized was still bleeding. For so long, I had blamed myself for Marcus's gambling, convinced that if I had just been more supportive, more understanding, more something, he would have stopped. Dr. Chen helped me see that his addiction was never my responsibility. His choices were his own. I also joined a support group for people who had experienced financial abuse. Sitting in a circle with a dozen other people who had similar stories, I realized how common this pattern was. The partner who slowly took control of the finances, the unexplained withdrawals, the lies and manipulations, the erosion of self-worth and independence. I was not alone. I had never been alone. I had just felt that way because shame had kept me silent. In the group, I met a woman named Patricia who became my friend. She was in her 50s, had spent 20 years with a husband who had gambled away their retirement savings, their children's college funds, their house. She had finally left him 2 years ago and was rebuilding her life from scratch. "It gets easier," she told me over coffee one day. "The first year is hell. You doubt yourself constantly. You feel guilty. You wonder if you made the right choice. But then one day you wake up and realize you haven't thought about him in 24 hours. Then it's 48 hours, then a week. And eventually he becomes just a chapter in your story, not the whole book." Her words gave me hope. I wanted to reach that place where Marcus was just a memory, a lesson learned, not a weight I carried every day. I also made practical changes. I took a financial literacy class at the community college, learning how to budget properly, how to save, how to invest. I opened a savings account that only I had access to, and set up automatic transfers from each paycheck. Even if it was just $20, it went into savings. Watching that account grow, knowing it was mine and could not be touched by anyone else, felt incredibly empowering. I started saying no to things I did not want to do. When coworkers asked me to cover their shifts when I was exhausted, I said no. When distant relatives asked to borrow money, I said no. When people tried to guilt me about the divorce, I said no to engaging in those conversations. It was terrifying at first. I had spent my whole life being agreeable, being helpful, being accommodating. But with each no, I felt stronger. And I started saying yes to things that brought me joy. I joined a book club at the library. I took a painting class. I went hiking on my days off. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with during my marriage because Marcus had always found reasons why we could not see them. I built a life that was mine, filled with people and activities that made me happy. 8 months after the divorce, my sister came to visit. She stayed with me for a week and we spent the time cooking together, watching movies, talking late into the night. On her last evening, we were sitting on my small balcony watching the sunset when she turned to me. "You seem different," she said. "Lighter somehow, happier." I thought about it. Was I happier? I was certainly poorer. I was working just as hard as before. I was still dealing with the trauma of what I had been through. But yes, I was happier. "I think I'm finally figuring out who I am, without someone else defining me," I said. For so long, I was Marcus's wife. Before that, I was mom and dad's daughter. I never really stopped to think about who Emma was, what Emma wanted. Now I'm learning. And what does Emma want? I smiled. I want a life where I don't have to check my bank account in fear every morning. I want relationships based on mutual respect, not obligation or manipulation. I want to be able to make decisions without having to justify them to someone else. I want to travel. I want to learn new things. I want to be free. That sounds pretty good to me. After she left, I stood in my apartment looking around at the space that was slowly becoming a home. It was not much. The furniture was still secondhand, the walls still bare in places. But it was clean. It was organized. It was peaceful. And most importantly, it was mine. I thought about Marcus sometimes. I heard through mutual friends that he was still gambling, still making promises he did not keep, still blaming everyone but himself for his problems. Part of me felt sad for him for the life he was wasting for the person he could have been if he had chosen differently. But mostly I felt grateful that he was no longer my problem. About a year after the divorce, I was at a coffee shop when I ran into Marcus. It was the first time I had seen him face to face since the night I kicked him out. He looked older, tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. For a moment we just stared at each other. "Emma," he said finally, "how are you?" "I'm good. Really good, actually." He nodded, looking down at his coffee cup. "I heard you got a promotion at work." "Congratulations." "Thank you." I had been made charge nurse a few months earlier, a position that came with more responsibility but also more money and respect. There was an awkward silence. Then Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm in therapy now. For real this time. And I've been going to GA meetings. I'm 90 days clean. No gambling." "That's great, Marcus. I'm happy for you." "Yeah." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "I owe you an apology. A real one. I was a terrible husband. I stole from you. I lied to you. I blamed you for my problems. You deserved so much better, and I'm sorry I couldn't give you that." I studied his face, trying to determine if he meant it or if this was another manipulation. But he looked genuine, his eyes meeting mine without the usual calculation behind them. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "I hope you're doing this for yourself, not because you think it will get me back." "No, I know we're done. You made that clear, and honestly, you were right to leave. I was destroying you. I was destroying both of us." He took a breath. "I just wanted you to know that I see that now. I see what I did wrong, and I'm sorry." "Okay. Thank you for telling me." We talked for a few more minutes, carefully navigating around the pain and history between us. He told me about his job at a warehouse, his small apartment, his sponsor from GA who kept him accountable. I told him a little about my life, keeping it surface level, not inviting him back in. When we said goodbye, there was a sense of closure I had not realized I needed. Walking home, I thought about that encounter. Part of me wondered if I should feel something more. Sadness for what we lost, hope that he was changing, but mostly I just felt neutral. He was a person I used to know, someone who had hurt me deeply, but who was now just another person trying to figure out their life. His journey was no longer connected to mine. That evening I sat down and wrote in my journal something Dr. Chen had encouraged me to do. I wrote about the encounter with Marcus. I wrote about how far I had come in the past year. I wrote about my plans for the future. And then I wrote something that surprised me. I forgive him. Not because he deserves it, but because I deserve the freedom that comes with letting go. I forgive him for being human, for being flawed, for being broken in ways I could not fix. And more importantly, I forgive myself. I forgive myself for staying too long, for believing the lies, for sacrificing so much. I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time, and now I know better. Now I do better. Tears streamed down my face as I wrote, but they were not sad tears. They were releasing tears, washing away the last remnants of bitterness and pain. When I finished writing, I felt lighter, like I had set down a burden I had been carrying so long it had become part of me. 2 years after the divorce, I found myself in a place I never imagined I would be. I had been promoted again at work and was now a nursing supervisor managing an entire unit. My salary had nearly doubled from what it was during my marriage. I had moved to a better apartment, one with 2 bedrooms, so my sister could visit more often and have her own space. I had furniture. I had chosen myself art on the walls that I loved, a kitchen stocked with good food. But more than the material improvements, I had something much more valuable. I had peace, I had self-respect, I had confidence in my own judgment, I had friendships based on mutual support rather than obligation. I had hobbies that brought me joy. I had a life that was entirely authentically mine. I started dating again cautiously. The first few attempts were disasters. I was hypersensitive to red flags, ready to bolt at the first sign of manipulation or financial irresponsibility. Dr. Chen helped me find balance, teaching me the difference between healthy caution and paranoid suspicion. And then I met James. He was a teacher at a local elementary school, patient and kind with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh. Our first date was coffee, our second was a walk in the park, our third was dinner at a small Italian restaurant. He paid for his meal, I paid for mine, and there was no awkwardness about it. He talked about his students with genuine affection, asked me thoughtful questions about my work, and never once tried to rush or pressure me. On our fourth date, I told him about Marcus, about the gambling, the financial abuse, the divorce. I expected him to be scared off, to make an excuse and disappear. Instead, he listened quietly, then reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said. "It must have taken incredible strength to leave and rebuild your life. I admire that." I started crying right there in the restaurant, overwhelmed by the simple act of being heard and believed without judgment. James handed me a napkin and waited patiently while I composed myself. That night, I went home and called my sister. "I think I met someone good," I told her. "Really good. Tell me everything." We talked for 2 hours, and for the first time in my life, I described a relationship that was healthy, balanced, and built on mutual respect. It felt foreign and wonderful all at once. James and I took things slow. After everything I had been through, slow was exactly what I needed. We dated for 6 months before I introduced him to my sister. We dated for a year before he met my mother, who predictably made comments about how I had wasted time divorcing Marcus when I could have worked things out. James squeezed my hand under the table and later told me we did not have to see her again if I did not want to. The fact that he gave me that choice, that he supported my boundaries without question, meant everything. We dated for 18 months before we moved in together, and even then I insisted on keeping separate bank accounts. James understood without me having to explain. He had his money, I had mine, and we split household expenses down the middle. There was no secrecy, no hiding, no unexplained withdrawals, just transparency and trust. 3 years after my divorce from Marcus, James proposed. We were hiking in the mountains, the same trail my sister had told me about during one of our phone calls years ago. The view was breathtaking, endless peaks stretching toward the horizon. James got down on one knee and pulled out a simple ring, nothing extravagant, just a single diamond on a silver band. "Emma," he said, his voice steady, "and sure, you are the strongest, bravest person I know. You took your broken pieces and built something beautiful. I would be honored to build a life with you as equals, as partners. Will you marry me?" I looked at him, this good man who had never once made me doubt my worth or question my decisions. This man who paid his own bills, managed his own life, and wanted to share it with me, not consume it. This man who understood that love was not about sacrifice or surrender, but about two whole people choosing to walk side by side. "Yes," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. We got married a year later in a small ceremony, with just our closest friends and family. My sister was my maid of honor. Patricia from my support group was there, beaming with pride. Dr. Chen came, which surprised me until she said that watching her clients heal and thrive was the greatest reward of her work. My mother came too, though. She spent most of the reception making passive-aggressive comments about how small the wedding was compared to my first one. James and I just smiled and ignored her. That night in our hotel room, I looked at my new husband and felt something I had not felt in my first marriage. Safety. Real bone-deep safety. The knowledge that I could trust him with my heart, my finances, my future, and he would not abuse that trust. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, pulling me close. "I'm thinking about how different this feels. How right it feels. With Marcus, I always felt like I was walking on eggshells waiting for the next crisis. With you, I feel like I can breathe." "You can," he said simply. "You can breathe. You can be yourself. You can take up space. That's what love is supposed to feel like." And he was right. That was what love was supposed to feel like. 5 years after my divorce, I was invited to speak at a conference on financial abuse. The invitation came from an organization that helped victims of economic exploitation, and they had read about my story in an article I had written for a mental health magazine. At first, I hesitated. Did I really want to stand in front of hundreds of people and expose my pain? But then I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who believed she was alone, who thought she was weak for staying, who did not know that what she was experiencing had a name. I accepted the invitation. Standing on that stage, looking out at the audience, I saw so many familiar expressions. The shame, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that things might get better. I saw myself in every face. My name is Emma. I began and I spent 3 years married to a man who stole every dollar I earned to feed his gambling addiction. I worked double shifts as a nurse, sacrificed sleep, health, and happiness, and still could not pay rent because my husband could not stop chasing the fantasy of the big win. I felt trapped. I felt ashamed. I felt like it was my fault. I paused, letting the words settle. But it was not my fault, and if you are in a similar situation, it is not your fault either. Financial abuse is real, it is insidious. It wears you down slowly, making you doubt your own judgment, making you believe that you are the problem. But you are not the problem. Your abuser's choices are the problem. I told them my story, not sparing the painful details. The glue incident I had heard about from others. The constant lies. The manipulation. The day I finally said enough. The terrifying process of leaving and rebuilding. The slow, difficult journey of healing. Leaving was the hardest thing I have ever done, I said. But staying would have killed me, maybe not physically, but emotionally and spiritually. I would have become a shell of a person existing but not living. And I decided I wanted more than that. I decided I deserved more than that. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. But more importantly, after my speech, dozens of people approached me. Some wanted to share their stories. Some wanted advice. Some just wanted to know that it was possible to leave and survive. I spent 2 hours after the conference talking to these brave, broken, beautiful people, and I felt a sense of purpose I had never experienced before. That conference was the beginning of something new. I started volunteering with the organization, mentoring people who were trying to leave financially abusive situations. I helped them create safety plans, find resources, understand their legal rights. I shared my story in support groups and online forums. I became an advocate using my pain as a tool to help others. One evening, about 6 years after my divorce, I received an email from a woman named Rachel. She had seen one of my talks online and wanted to thank me. She wrote that she had been married for 8 years to a man who had drained her inheritance, maxed out credit cards in her name, and left her financially devastated. She had felt too ashamed to tell anyone, convinced she was stupid for letting it happen. But after hearing my story, she realized she was a victim of abuse, not a fool. She had filed for divorce, pressed charges for fraud, and was rebuilding her life. "You saved me," she wrote. "Not directly, but by being brave enough to speak up, you gave me permission to save myself. Thank you." I sat at my kitchen table reading that email over and over, tears streaming down my face. James found me like that and wrapped his arms around me. "Good tears or bad tears?" he asked. "Good tears," I managed. "The best tears." This was why I had survived. Not just to build my own happy ending, but to light the way for others still trapped in the darkness. 7 years after my divorce from Marcus, I finally felt ready to do something I had been avoiding. I went back to my hometown to visit my father's grave. I had not been there since his funeral, too angry at my mother's, enabling, too bitter about the childhood I had lost to his alcoholism. But therapy and time had softened my anger into understanding. My father had been sick. My mother had done what she thought was right, even if it was wrong. They were both products of their own trauma and limitations. Standing at his grave, I spoke out loud, not caring if anyone heard me. "Dad, I wish you had gotten help. I wish you had loved yourself enough to stop drinking. I wish you had been there for me, really been there, not just physically present, but emotionally available. But I understand now that you could not give what you did not have. I forgive you. I hope you found peace." I placed flowers on the grave and walked away feeling lighter. Forgiveness, I had learned, was not about excusing bad behavior. It was about releasing the hold that behavior had on your heart. I visited my mother next. She was living in a small apartment now, older and frailer than I remembered. We had a civil but distant relationship, speaking a few times a year, never about anything important. But today I wanted to try. "Mom," I said, sitting across from her in her cramped living room, "I need you to understand something. When you told me I was being dramatic about Marcus, when you said I should have stayed and worked it out, you were wrong. You were wrong, and it hurt me deeply." She stiffened her teacup, rattling slightly in its saucer. "I was trying to give you advice based on my own experience." "I know. But your experience was surviving, not thriving. You stayed with Dad, and it broke you. I did not want that to be my story. I wanted more. I deserved more. So, you think I was wrong to stay with your father?" Her voice was defensive, hurt. "I think you did what you thought was right for you. But it was not right for me. And I need you to respect that, even if you do not understand it." We sat in uncomfortable silence for a long moment. Then my mother set down her teacup and looked at me with something I had rarely seen in her eyes. recognition. You are braver than I ever was, she said quietly. I always knew I should leave, but I was too afraid. Too afraid of being alone, of what people would think of starting over. So I stayed and I made excuses, and I told myself it was noble. But it was not noble, it was cowardice, and I am sorry I tried to make you do the same thing. It was not a perfect apology. It did not erase the years of criticism and judgment. But it was something, a crack in the wall between us, a possibility of understanding. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. We talked for another hour, really talked about her marriage, her regrets, her fears. About my marriage, my healing, my life now. When I left, we hugged, and it felt more genuine than any embrace we had shared in decades. 8 years after my divorce, James and I decided to buy a house, a real house with a backyard and a garage and room to grow. We looked at dozens of properties before finding the one. It was a small, craftsman-style home with hardwood floors and a fireplace and a garden that needed work but had good bones. The day we moved in, I stood in the empty living room and thought about the apartment I had shared with Marcus. The worn furniture, the empty cabinets, the constant anxiety about making rent. And then I looked around at this house, this home that James and I had bought together with money we had both earned and saved, and I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. You okay? James asked, carrying in a box labeled kitchen. I am more than okay, I said. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. We spent that first night in our new home sitting on the floor eating pizza and making plans. Where the couch would go, what color to paint the bedroom, how to transform the overgrown garden into something beautiful. It was mundane and perfect, and everything I had ever wanted. That summer, my sister and her girlfriend came to visit. We spent a week working on the garden together, planting flowers and vegetables, laughing and getting dirt under our fingernails. On the last evening of their visit, we sat on the back porch watching fireflies dance in the twilight. Do you ever think about Marcus? My sister asked suddenly. Sometimes, I admitted, but not like I used to. He is just part of my past now, not a weight I carry. I heard through a mutual friend that he is engaged to someone new. I hope he has changed. I hope he is not doing to her what he did to me, but either way, it is not my problem anymore. And that does not bother you, knowing he might be happy. No. His happiness or unhappiness has nothing to do with me. I am happy. That is what matters. My sister smiled. You have come so far. I am so proud of you. I am proud of me too. 9 years after my divorce, I was offered a position as the director of nursing at a different hospital. It was a significant step up in responsibility and salary, but it would mean longer hours and more stress. James and I talked about it for weeks, weighing the pros and cons together like true partners. What do you want to do? He finally asked. Not what you think you should do or what would make the most sense financially. What do you actually want? I thought about it carefully. Did I want more money? Yes. Did I want more professional recognition? Yes. But did I want to sacrifice the work-life balance I had finally achieved? Did I want to give up my volunteer work, my mentoring, my speaking engagements? I want to say no, I admitted. I want to stay where I am doing work I love with time for the other things that matter. Is that okay? It is more than okay. It is your decision to make. So I turned down the promotion and did not regret it for a second. I had learned that more was not always better, that success looked different for different people, and that I got to define what success meant for me. 10 years after my divorce from Marcus, I stood in front of another audience at another conference. But this time I was not nervous. I was confident, seasoned, sure of my message and my purpose. 10 years ago, I told them I was a woman who did not recognize her own worth, who believed that love meant sacrifice and suffering, who thought that leaving made me a failure. Today, I am a woman who knows that real love elevates, not diminishes, that healthy relationships are built on respect, not need, that leaving something toxic is not failure, it is survival. I showed them photos from my journey. The small apartment where I started over, the support group that held me up, the courtroom where my divorce was finalized, the house James and I bought, the garden we built together, the life I had created from the ashes of my old one. If you take nothing else from my story, I said, take this. You are not defined by what was done to you. You are defined by what you do next. You are not weak for staying. You are strong for leaving. And most importantly, you are worthy of love that does not hurt, relationships that do not drain you, and a life that is truly yours. The standing ovation lasted for 5 minutes. But the real reward came later when a young woman approached me, tears streaming down her face, and handed me a note. It said simply, I am leaving tomorrow. Thank you for showing me it is possible. That night, lying in bed next to James in the home we had built together, I thought about that young woman. I thought about Rachel and Patricia and all the others who had found the courage to leave. I thought about my own journey, the pain and the healing and the transformation. "What are you smiling about?" James asked, half asleep. "I am just thinking about how grateful I am. For this life. For you. For every choice that led me here. Even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones. Because they taught me who I am and what I am capable of. They taught me that I am stronger than I ever knew." He kissed my forehead and pulled me close. "Yes, you are." I closed my eyes, feeling safe and loved and complete. The girl who had been broken by Marcus's abuse was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who demanded respect, who built her life on her own terms. A woman who had taken her pain and turned it into purpose. A woman who had survived and then thrived. 11 years after my divorce, I published a book about my experience. It was part memoir, part guide for people leaving financially abusive situations. I wrote about the warning signs I had missed, the manipulation tactics Marcus had used, the practical steps I took to leave and rebuild. I wrote about the emotional journey of healing, the setbacks and breakthroughs, the slow process of learning to trust again. The book became a bestseller in the self-help category. Not because my story was unique, but because it was universal. Thousands of people saw themselves in my words, found validation in my experience, and hope in my survival. I went on a book tour, speaking in cities across the country. In every city, people lined up to share their stories with me. Some were still trapped, gathering courage to leave. Others had recently escaped and needed reassurance they had made the right choice. Still others were years into their healing journey and wanted to celebrate how far they had come. In Seattle, a man in his 40s approached me with tears in his eyes. "Thank you for writing this," he said. "People think financial abuse only happens to women, but my ex-wife did the same thing to me that your ex-husband did to you. For years I felt too ashamed to tell anyone. Your book made me realize I was not alone." In Boston, a woman in her 70s told me she had been married for 45 years before finally leaving her financially abusive husband. "I thought I was too old to start over," she said. "But your story showed me it is never too late." In Phoenix, a college student told me she had watched her mother endure financial abuse her entire childhood and had sworn never to end up in the same situation. "Your book is teaching me what to look for, what boundaries to set. You are helping me break the cycle." These conversations filled me with purpose and reminded me why I had chosen to be so vulnerable and public about my pain. If my story could help even one person escape, heal, or prevent abuse, then every word was worth it. 12 years after my divorce, James and I decided to renew our vows. It was not because anything was wrong with our marriage. It was because everything was right and we wanted to celebrate that. We wanted to stand in front of our community and recommit to the partnership we had built. The ceremony was in our garden, surrounded by the flowers we had planted together, the vegetables we grew every summer, the trees we had watched mature. My sister officiated, speaking about transformation and resilience and the power of choosing yourself. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at James and felt my heart overflow. "When I met you, I was still healing from wounds I thought might never close. I was guarded and suspicious and terrified of making another mistake. But you were patient. You showed me through consistent action, not empty words, that love could be safe, that partnership could be equal, that I deserved to be cherished, not used. You gave me space to heal and time to trust and permission to be fully myself. You are my best friend, my partner, my home. I choose you today and every day." James's vows were equally beautiful, speaking about my strength and courage and the privilege it was to walk beside me. When he slipped the ring back on my finger, it felt like a completion of a journey that had started in pain but had led to profound joy. At the reception, Patricia gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. "To Emma," she said, raising her glass, "who showed us all that the end of a toxic relationship is not a tragedy, it is a liberation. Who proved that you can take your broken pieces and create something more beautiful than what you started with. Who taught us that happily ever after is not about finding the right person, but about becoming the right person for yourself first." To Emma, and to all of us who found the courage to choose ourselves. Everyone raised their glasses. To choosing ourselves. That night, after all the guests had gone home, James and I sat in the garden under the stars. The same stars that had witnessed my darkest moments now looked down on my greatest joy. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you had stayed?" James asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. But not in a wistful way. More like looking at a bullet I dodged. If I had stayed, I would have lost myself completely. I would have become a ghost going through the motions, but not really living. Instead, I left and I found out who I really am. I found my strength. I found my voice. I found you. So no, I do not regret leaving. I only regret not leaving sooner. What would you tell the woman you were 12 years ago if you could? I thought carefully about that question. What would I say to that exhausted, frightened, desperate version of myself who checked her bank account in terror every morning? I would tell her that she is stronger than she knows, that the courage she needs is already inside her just waiting to be claimed, that leaving will be hard, the hardest thing she has ever done, but staying will be harder in ways that destroy the soul. I would tell her that 1 year from leaving she will be able to breathe again. 5 years from leaving she will be thriving. 10 years from leaving she will look back and barely recognize the woman she used to be. I would tell her that it gets better, so much better than she can possibly imagine. James squeezed my hand. I wish I could have met her. That earlier version of you. I would have told her the same thing. You did meet her in a way. She is still part of me, just transformed. Everything I went through made me who I am today. The pain taught me compassion. The struggle taught me resilience. The healing taught me grace. I would not be the person you love if I had not walked through that fire. Then I am grateful for your journey, even though I wish you had not had to suffer. Me too. But I did suffer and I survived, and that survival made me powerful in ways I never would have been otherwise. So I guess I am grateful too in a complicated way. We sat in comfortable silence listening to the crickets and feeling the cool night breeze. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The girl I had been raised by a mother who modeled endurance over happiness and a father who chose addiction over family. The woman I had become during my marriage to Marcus, slowly losing herself in the effort to save someone who did not want to be saved. The person I had transformed into after leaving stronger and clearer and more authentically me than ever before. Every choice, every hardship, every moment of doubt and fear and determination had led to this garden, this man, this life, this peace. And it was worth it. Every single painful step was worth it. 13 years after my divorce, I received an unexpected message. It was from Marcus, the first contact in over a decade. My initial instinct was to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. Emma, it read, I know I have no right to contact you after all this time. I understand if you delete this without responding, but I wanted you to know that I have been sober from gambling for 7 years now. I got real help, not the half measures I claimed I was doing when we were married. I have rebuilt my life and I am engaged to a wonderful woman who knows everything about my past. We have been together for 4 years and I have been completely honest with her from the start. I am not asking for anything from you. I do not expect forgiveness or a response. I just wanted you to know that the wake-up call you gave me when you left, as much as it hurt at the time, saved my life. You were right to leave. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you have found happiness. You deserve all of it. I read the message 3 times looking for manipulation, for hidden agendas for the catch. But I could not find one. It seemed genuine. Marcus seemed to have actually changed, actually done the work he had promised so many times but never followed through on. I showed the message to James, who read it thoughtfully. How do you feel about this? I do not know. Part of me is glad he got help. Part of me is angry that he could not do it while we were married. Part of me does not care at all because he is so far in my past. It is complicated. Do you want to respond? I thought about it for a long time. What would be the point? What would I say? Finally, I decided that closure did not require a conversation. Closure was something I had already given myself years ago. Marcus's recovery was his journey, not mine. His apology was his healing, not mine. I did not need to engage with it to move forward because I had already moved forward. I deleted the message without responding and went back to my life. 14 years after my divorce, I was invited to testify before a congressional committee about financial abuse and the need for better legal protections. It was surreal sitting in that formal room with cameras and representatives and knowing my words might influence actual policy. I spoke about my experience, about the thousands of people I had worked with who had similar stories about the gaps in the legal system that allowed abusers to continue their behavior without consequences. Financial abuse is often invisible, I told the committee. There are no bruises to photograph, no police reports to file, but the damage is just as real and just as devastating. People lose their savings, their credit, their homes, their futures, and often they lose their sense of self-worth in the process. We need laws that recognize economic coercion as abuse. We need protections for victims. We need education so people can recognize the warning signs before they are trapped. Several months later, a bill was introduced that included many of the protections I had advocated for. It was a small victory in a long fight, but it was a victory nonetheless. My pain had been transformed into policy. My story had become part of a larger movement for change. 15 years after my divorce, I looked around at the life I had built and felt complete. Not because everything was perfect. Life was never perfect. But because I had created a life that was authentically mine, built on my values aligned with my purpose, filled with people who respected and cherished me. I was 53 years old. I had weathered storms that would have broken many people. I had lost years to abuse and trauma. I had struggled and suffered and wondered if I would ever feel whole again. But I had survived. More than survived. I had thrived. I thought about the different versions of myself. The frightened girl raised in dysfunction, the desperate wife trying to save a man who did not want saving, the woman who finally said enough. The survivor who rebuilt from nothing, the advocate who turned pain into purpose, the wife who found real love, the author who shared her story, the activist who fought for systemic change. All of these women were me. All of these experiences had shaped me. And I was grateful for all of it, even the parts that had hurt because they had made me into someone I was proud to be. James found me in the garden lost in thought and sat down beside me. "Penny, for your thoughts." I was just thinking about how far I have come, how different my life is from what I imagined it would be 15 years ago. Better or worse? So much better, beyond anything I could have imagined. I thought leaving Marcus meant accepting loneliness and struggle. I thought I was choosing survival over happiness, but it turned out I was choosing both. I survived and then I found happiness I never knew was possible. What do you think made the difference between staying stuck and building this life? Choice, I said without hesitation. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I chose my own well-being over someone else's comfort. I chose my future over my past. I chose possibility over certainty. And that one choice led to 1,000 other choices that built this life. But it all started with that first one. The choice to say enough. The choice to leave. The choice to believe I deserved better. And now I choose this every day. I choose you. I choose this life. I choose gratitude and purpose and joy. I choose to use my story to help others. I choose to keep growing and healing and becoming. The difference is, now I know I have the power to choose. That was the gift of leaving. Not just escaping something bad, but discovering I had agency over my own life. We sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The garden around us was lush and thriving, a testament to years of patient care. Like the garden, I had been carefully tended, watered by therapy and support and self-compassion, pruned of toxic relationships, given space and sunlight to grow into my full potential. I was not the same person who had checked her bank account in terror 15 years ago. That woman was gone, transformed through suffering and survival into someone infinitely stronger. But I carried her with me, always a reminder of where I had been and how far I had come. She was the reason I did this work, the reason I spoke and wrote and advocated and mentored. Because somewhere out there another woman was checking her bank account in fear, believing she was trapped, thinking she was alone. And I wanted her to know what I had learned through blood and tears and determination. It gets better. You are stronger than you know. You deserve more than this. And the life you dream of is not only possible, it is waiting for you on the other side of the hardest decision you will ever make. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. You just have to be brave enough to claim it.